Hey everybody, I'm Tammy Kiekafer. I'm a licensed clinical social worker.
And my name's Desiree Grimaldi. Welcome to Unguarded Minds podcast, where we talk about all the drama, trauma, and gritty things that life throws at you. Today we have a special guest with us, Al Richards. Al Richards is a true inspiration to those who have faced addiction and seeking a way to overcome it after battling a weekend alcohol and cocaine addiction for 8 years. Al lost his job of 24 years as a result, but instead of giving up, he turned his life around and he spent the last 15 years working tirelessly on himself and helping others understand addiction. In March of 2021, he started the Other Side of Addiction podcast, which was quickly became a space for open and honest dialogue about addiction and recovery. Al is also the co-founder of the Healing Utah Success Summit. Al and Mallory, I don't want to butcher her last name.
It's
had
Roosh.
a dream of holding it. Roosh had a dream of holding, hoping that they would inspire and educate those in recovery and their families. In August of 22, they held their first event in St. George, Utah. Since then, they have done 2 more summits, one in April and October of 2023 in Sandy, Utah, with a ton of positive feedback. And just this past February in 2023, Al started an ARC Addiction Resilience Collection networking group in an effort to connect people with the resources and support they need to overcome addiction. Al believes that it's time to lift each other up, and he is leading the way with his powerful message in hope and healing. Welcome, Al.
Thank you, ladies. I appreciate it. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Happy to be here.
So we just dig right in, and we'd love to start in your weekend warrior time, if you will, of the weekend alcohol and cocaine, and what got you to that point. Like, what was your education on addiction before that happened, or your experience with it, and how it went from maybe a weekend one-time thing to an 8-year bender?
Okay.
I guess.
It all started really when I was 17. I graduated from high school in 81. Shortly out of high school, I started working for a construction outfit and was working construction here in Salt Lake City. And they wanted to shut down the crew here and take a bunch of guys to Denver, Colorado. And being a 17-year-old kid wanting to get out from underneath the wings of his mom and dad, I jumped on that in a heartbeat. I says, I'm ready to go. And we moved out to a little place. First, we was right inside Denver, and then they grabbed a few of us to start up a crew in Windsor, Colorado, which was a little small farm town. 1 traffic light. That's all that was in there. And we met some other guys that got hired on. And one time, a bunch of the guys that I was living with decided to go to Greeley and go to one of the bars. And I wasn't up to it. So I stayed home, and one of my other friends come over, and he goes, "Man, let's party." And I'm like, all right. So we broke out the 2 Fingers tequila and started taking some shots. And he pulled out this little baby envelope, and he opens it up, and he's like, "Where's your saucers?" And I went over and got a saucer, and I'm like, "What is that?" And he goes, "It's Coke." And he goes, "You want some?" I'm like, "Oh, no. John Belushi just overdosed, right? Like 2 weeks before all this happened, and he overdosed on cocaine." And I'm thinking, nope, I don't want anything to do with it. Well, as I started drinking a little bit more, I finally said, "You know what? Let me try one of those lines." I did a few lines, not realizing what that was going to do to my life years down the road. Long story short, partied here and there. Every once in a while I would do it, but it wasn't a part of my life. I started working for a manufacturing company here in Salt Lake City in February of 1986, quickly moved up the corporate ladder, spent 3 years in Bowling Green, Kentucky, getting the plant up and going, and very stressful job. I worked a year and a half, 7 days a week for a year and a half straight. Usually Saturdays and Sundays I'd work maybe 6 hours on Saturday, 2, 3, 4 hours on Sunday. Once all my mechanics got trained, production started going. I wasn't working as many hours. And then I wanted to get back to Salt Lake because my 2 daughters was here. And I ended up getting transferred back after 3 years of being in Bowling Green. And they quickly, and not their fault, because I was the one that was asking for it, they started piling one responsibility on me after another. And before I knew it, I was over 12 packaging lines. I was over the outside maintenance. I was over the parts room. I was over housekeeping. I had 43 employees underneath me, pretty much every nationality you could think of. Projects coming at me left and right out of our liquid department. So it was a laundry detergent manufacturing. So liquid was changing very quickly. The powders was going away. Liquid was really starting to boom. And had tons of stress on me. Went to a party. The wife that I was married to at the time was working for a car dealership, and she goes, "Hey, we've been invited to a party this weekend. You want to go?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, absolutely, let's go." And I met one of the guys, and we started chatting, and we hit it off pretty well. And he come back and he got me, and he goes, "Hey, do you do any of this?" And he's hitting his nose, and I kind of knew what that meant. And I says, "Gosh, it's been so long." "Oh my gosh, yes." So we go back in the back room, and it's almost like I did when I did that very first line at 17. I was in heaven. I just fell in love. That night at that party was the first time in I don't know how long where my mind was completely off work. I wasn't stressed about what was coming up on Monday. I really didn't care. I was chilling. I was having fun. And about a week or so, 2 weeks after the party, I got a hold of my wife, and I says, "Hey, do you know who that guy was?" And she goes, "Yeah, it's a friend of one of the other guys that I work with." And I said, "Do you think I could get his phone number?" And I ended up giving this guy a call, and I said, "Hey, do you know where I could get some of that stuff?" And he goes, "Yeah, I do, for me." And I'm like, "Oh, so you sell it?" And he goes, "Yeah, I'm the one that brought it to the party." And I just started getting it from him. And before I knew it, it was every single Friday and Saturday night. Those are the only nights that I did it. And again, that was my release. It was my escape from the stress of work. Now, years after that, after I lost my job, things kind of changed and I started realizing some other stuff. But, it was crazy because I met this gal that was at the plant, and we hit it off really well, went on a few dates. And before I knew it, we were dating continuously. I ended up moving in with her, and we just hit it off really, really well. She was totally against all that stuff. She drank, but she was totally against everything else because her dad was a heroin addict. And she thought all that other stuff was so hardcore that she just didn't want it around. I dated this woman for 3 years. The whole time we dated, she had no clue I was doing coke every weekend. And after 3 years,
Wow.
I decided to get married again to her. Thought I'd give marriage one more shot. And we got married in May of, what was it, 2009, May of 2009. July of 2009, I walked into work, worked half the day. My boss called me in his office, said, "You got to go over and have a UA," and you can imagine how I felt. I'm like, whoa, I'm thinking, what? I haven't been UA'd like 15 years. No way. Not me. There's no way I'm going to get UA'd. I'm like, I can't today, right? I've got this going on, this going on. The plant manager's on my butt about this. And he goes, okay, tomorrow for sure. I came home, called everybody I knew. How do you pass a drug test? What can I take? I was drinking pickle juice, vinegar, grape juice, prune juice, as much water as possible. I mean, I was doing it all. And all behind my wife's back. Went in the next day, finally had to go over, do the UA. A week went by, didn't hear anything. 2 weeks went by, didn't hear anything. And I went, I flippin' beat it. I beat it. Holy cow, I beat it. The third week comes up, and about halfway through the week, I'm in my office having a meeting with some of my mechanics, and I hear security call my boss over the radio and says, "Debbie Mayer needs to see you in her office." Debbie Mayer was the HR manager. And immediately, all my blood went to my feet. I knew exactly what it was. And about 15 minutes later, he showed up at my office door, said, "Finish up your meeting." I walked employees over to HR. Now it was my turn. And yeah, my test came back positive. They put me on suspension till further notice. I called in. Well, the next day I didn't go to work. My wife asked me why I didn't go to work. I said I wasn't feeling good. She fell for it. Second day, same thing. Third day, she came home and she goes, not with like nice language, she goes, "All right, you son of a, you be straight with me. You don't ever call in sick, ever. You even go to work when I've seen you have a fever. What the hell is going on?" She's only been my wife for a month and a half. And I had to break down and tell her what happened. And you can imagine what that just did to that woman. A man she trusted, believed in those 3 years we dated, I just took a shotgun to it. And she stayed with me. She stayed with me.
Are
So,
you guys
yeah,
still
I ended up
together?
losing my job a couple weeks after. And that's when I decided it was time to look at myself real hard in the mirror. It's kind of like that song, The Man in the Mirror. I was up at 198 pounds. I've never weighed that much in my life. And it was just because all the cocaine and booze I was drinking on the weekend. I've always been physical fit. I used to actually bodybuild and compete in bodybuilding. And here I am, 198 pounds, double chin. Couldn't see my shoes if I looked down to look at my feet. And I had a friend tell me that I was never trusted. And he said I was a liar and a manipulator, and I called BS on it. And then I really started thinking, and I went, you know what? He's 100% right. All I gave a crap is about Al. If Al didn't get his way, I would do anything I could to get my way, to get what I wanted. And I was always respectful to people, but I could become a chameleon really, really quick. And that's when I decided no more, no more of this. And that's when I started changing my life around. I've been working on it for the past 15 years, and I will continue to work on it till God calls me home.
And you're making a huge impact with other people that you come across their path, suffering or recovering from similar situations.
Yeah, and Desiree, really, that's not really what got me to go that direction, to be honest with you, because I never looked at myself as an addict. And I didn't know anything about addiction. You guys even asked that, and I had no clue about addiction. While I was working on myself, we ended up losing our house a year later, and my wife plummeted. I mean, she went into alcohol deep, and I came out of my cesspool, and she jumped right into hers. I mean, we just got divorced last year because she ended up relapsing after 2.5 years of sobriety. And within 2 weeks, wrecked her car 3 times, totaled it last time, lost her job. I mean, just it was imploding that quick. And I'm like, I'm not doing this again. But that's what got me to start all this, because of I stayed with her for all those years. I stuck by her side. I did everything I could, thinking I knew all there was to know about addiction when I didn't even know this much.
Did she
Wow.
try to hide it from you, the alcohol?
Yeah, that's when I noticed things was changing. I noticed that she started
Hmm.
hiding bottles, start sneaking out to the
Hmm.
garage before we lost our house and going out there and drinking. And, it
Hmm.
got to where you could smell it on her all the time. And she's, she used to get, I mean, they get pretty creative. She would dump vodka in scope and drink it so you couldn't smell the alcohol, which that was eating her gut up, right? Because that's got all kinds of nasty chemicals in it. And it got so bad she was shoplifting, cooking wine at the stores and drinking 3, 4, 5 bottles a day of cooking wine.
Wow.
And I mean, it just turned her into, and she was 5'2", weighed 105 pounds, and that it just turned her into a monster. I mean, it was not the woman that I fell in love with. It just Jekyll and Hyde. And yeah, life turned crazy during that time.
So when you started way back when, it started just on a weekend. Had you been around it in your family? Does addiction run in your family? Did it surprise you that you it just became such a huge part of your life?
Yeah, it did. It just became a part of my life, Tammy. Really, it's. I mean, my dad drank. He drank beer, drink a 12 pack a night. But he never. I never do recall as a kid seeing him around the house drunk off his butt and throwing fits and things
Hmm.
like that. And he
Hmm.
quit years and years before even all this stuff. I mean, I hid this from everyone. My family didn't have a clue. Heck, my girlfriend of 3 years didn't even have a clue.
And so when you started, you said you were married and you have two girls.
Yes.
How soon did that marriage end?
Well, that,
After
that marriage
you,
ended a long before. So I got divorced with my daughter's mom back in the 1990s. I think it was like 91 or 90,
okay,
93, I think it was.
okay,
So
okay.
and I still had my girls every weekend,
Hmm.
which was crazy too, because a lot of the times I had my girls on the weekend, I was doing it.
Hmm.
And, I was
Did
still,
they know?
uh-uh. I was still being a
They didn't know.
father. I was still
Yeah.
doing things, but yeah,
Hmm.
they didn't, they didn't know. Cause, I would drink with it and it would help level things out,
Mm.
so I wasn't getting to where I was getting really, really high, and I was getting to where I
Hmm.
wasn't really, really drunk. I was able to,
Hmm.
I got so good at maintaining it. I could just do this with the scales, just constantly go back and
Hmm.
forth a little bit. I never did get too far in one or the other.
Yeah.
So, growing up with addiction, not of my own, but my parents were both addicts, and the creativity that they have within them, um, it's it's a lot. But I mean, at 8 years old, I would find the bottles in the couch, in the like hidden in the VHS packaging. She'd put the Bukoff vodka bottles in those and close them, and the tapes would be piled.
Wow.
She'd pour it in coffee, so that you couldn't smell it. I remember in summertime, she'd have it like stuck behind the seat in the car, and it would be like 100 degrees, and she'd come out and chug it. And it's like, it's crazy. But I think that's a huge part of it too. So I grew up seeing it, and I knew very young that was not the path I wanted. And so having kids of my own that don't see it, I think that's a huge part, because when you don't know what it looks like and you don't see it, and you're like, I don't do it every day and I only do it this. And, it's hard to identify as a problem or as an addiction, um, because you didn't grow up around it. You didn't see it as addiction. Where, like, as a parent myself, I tell my daughter, like, if you have a scheduled date every Friday to drink, that's an addiction. You have it planned out. It's something that you consistently do, you know, and just trying to make my kids aware that it's something that they're very, able to happen to them. And so I think that that's a tough thing to do when people do find themselves in addiction and don't have that background knowledge in it.
Yeah, absolutely. With you saying that, Desiree, my wife was in a rehab. Well, she's my ex-wife now, but she was in a rehab, and she had a 24-hour stay. And I went and picked her up on a Friday night to bring her home and be able to spend the night with her and a little bit the next day. And she's telling me all this stuff that was happening at the recovery center. And me, being an addiction therapist, as good as I was, started in on her. And she says, "Can I stop you for a minute?" And I says, "Okay, what?" And she goes, "I don't want you to say a word after I say this." I'm like, "Okay, yeah, what?" And she goes, "For once, just for once, I wish you'd be my effing husband instead of my effing therapist, because you don't have a clue what I'm going through." And that was like a shot in the crotch. But did I get it?
Hmm.
Uh-uh. But she was 100% right. I didn't know anything about addiction. I had no clue what she was going through. Yet I was there to
Oh.
be her therapist, right, to help her along, when all I did, I mean, I made the same mistakes over and over and over for 8, 9 years during her addiction. thinking I was going to get a different result, and I always got the same result. And literally, all I did was add more fuel on the fire.
And with alcohol too, with it being legal, people don't see it as much of an addiction as heroin or cocaine but when I was calling around in an emergency to get my father in rehab, they were nobody had beds. I'm like, he's withdrawing, he's telling me his bones are breaking, like all this stuff, because he was going through heroin withdrawal. And she was like, is he an alcoholic? And I was like, no, he's a heroin addict. And I said, he takes pills and he does all these things. She goes, well, then I can't make room for him. And I'm like, it took me calling 7 rehabs for one of them to go, if he's withdrawing from alcohol, we can get him in because it's the only withdrawal you can die from. I was like, what? They were like, alcohol is the only withdrawal you can die from. Yeah, you'll be sick. Yeah, you'll have body aches. All these things for
Wow.
actual street drugs. But alcohol is the only one that can actually kill you.
Yeah, 100% right. Because I thought she was using that to get me to go buy her another bottle. She's like, I will die. And I'm like, oh, BS, BS. And eventually after 4 hours of freaking arguing, I would finally break down and go get that bottle. And one time I had to take her to the emergency center, and I was talking to the doctors, and the doctors go, yeah, she could die. She cannot just stop just like that. And I'm like, you're flipping serious. Then I was talking to one of her therapists, and her therapist goes, you didn't know that? I'm like, no, I just thought she was using that so I would go buy her more alcohol. So yeah, you're right. It's the only one that if you try to quit just cold turkey and you drink that heavy, you can go into seizures and it would kill you.
Mm-hmm. I didn't know that was the only one. Yeah, I would have guessed heroin. Yeah, I didn't know that. Yeah, I think, I was the one on the other side in a relationship with someone who a long, long time ago who was using cocaine. I had no idea. And just the behaviors were so erratic, and I just thought, maybe I did say that we were going to go have plans. Maybe I did say, it must have been my fault that something happened or he couldn't remember, or he would make things up that I had said or what we were going to do, or, just like everything would be fine. And then bam, he'd be so angry. And I just was like, I don't know. I just thought, I was going crazy. Like, what did I do? Or maybe I can't remember what he was talking about. And then I found out that he had been using cocaine, and it all just came together. And it was, just the anger, but the justifying, the rationalizing, the hiding, the sneaking, the creativity. It was shocking.
Yeah, you come up with a lot of different ways. And I found myself to be really very lucky and very blessed, if that makes sense, right? I'm doing cocaine every weekend, yet I was very blessed of how, because I never got crazy. That's why people had no clue that I was on it, because I could maintain so well. I mean,
and was that because of the alcohol, or
well, the
were you
alcohol would
just
help. Yeah, yeah. Because even when I'd go to parties with people who did it with me at parties, they would make comments all the time. They're like, we can never tell if you're freaking high on this stuff or not. You don't. Well, the rest of us are gritting our teeth and we're antsy and all this, and I'm just having a good time, right? I wouldn't get that way, which was so crazy. However, that demon had a hold of me so tight, because Fridays would come and I'd tell myself Friday morning, nope, I'm not going to call. Nope, I'm not going to call my guy. Nope, I'm not going to call. I'm not doing anyone. Nope, I'm not going to do it. And then 1:00 would hit, and I'm like, oh, screw it. And I'd be on the phone, and I would do that every single Friday to try to talk myself out of it. But it just had a hold of me. And it's because, again, to justify it, it was my release, right? I didn't think about work, and I could have fun, because during the week I was completely stressed out. I was working 13, 14-hour days, and still getting phone calls at home because something was going on at the plant. And
right.
yeah, when I was doing that stuff, I could turn my phone off and say, I'm partying.
And so it was your quick fix. It was that immediate gratification, I want out. I gotta find a release. In that time when you were contemplating, no, don't make the phone call. Yeah, make the phone call. Did you ever try anything, any other coping mechanisms? Did you think about getting into counseling? Were those just kind of unrealistic because you knew your
Mhm.
quick fix was one phone call away?
Yeah. Well, and the reason why I
Hmm.
didn't do those other things, Tammy, is because I didn't think I had a problem, right? I mean, I was only doing it twice a week. There's 7 days in a
Mm,
week. The other five, I'm great.
yeah,
So I don't have a problem, even
yeah.
though I knew, and it was so crazy because it got to the point where I would go, if we had parties, we would have parties over at our house, and I had my man cave set up out inside in the garage, the stereo, dartboard, refrigerator full of booze, TV out there. And I remember going up into our master bedroom and looking in the mirror and going, God, please help me. Because I know this is not taking me down a good road. I've been doing it so long. And one weekend, one weekend I did get pretty hammered. And I went into our master bath to go to the bathroom. I don't know why. I don't know if I blacked out just for a minute, and I fell. And I mean, I fell into the tub, took the shower curtain down, everything. My wife and her girlfriend come running in, and there I am, still thinking I'm going to the bathroom, right, and laying in the flipping tub. And she's like, "What the hell?" And I remember the next morning, even telling myself in my head, "This is getting out of control. This is starting to get way out of control." And that's why I never took any other type of drugs other than maybe some mushrooms or smoke some hash. But I mean, I had chances at parties in construction doing acid and things like that. And I'm like, anything that's going to make me hallucinate that I don't know what's real, I don't want anything to do
Mhm.
with it. And I always stayed away from that stuff. The Coke is as far as I went. However, it really took a hold of me, and I knew I was heading down a path that could destroy so many things. And it did, right? I
Mhm.
lost my job of 24 years because of it, a career that I worked my butt off to get to where I had gotten. I was making really good money. I had like 900 and something hours of PTO because I never called in sick. I was there every day. I was reliable. But as far as my health, it was coming at me, and I remember even asking God, please help me, and He did. I lost my job, and that did it.
Yeah. How'd you drop a UA that day? Was it a
I don't
random or
I don't know. It was just so the
do you think
company was owned
someone
by
suspected?
I don't think so. I don't
Hmm.
think so. Because I had been doing it for so long, right? And it could have been. That's a really good question, Tammy. Someone may have said, "Hey,
Hmm.
he's not acting right." Maybe my
Check this
my
guy out.
whole
Yeah.
attitude and everything was starting to change, and I wasn't realizing it.
Hmm.
So that could have been because it just came out of nowhere. Because, like I said, I hadn't been tested in 15 years. I was a model
Right.
employee.
Hmm. So, what do you tell people when they either you reach out to them or I don't know if they come to you, but in that time when they're like, yeah, no, I don't have a problem, and you're like, yeah, you do. Because everybody else can see it around you. It's hard for you to see it yourself oftentimes. So, what do you tell people to help them get that realization that, if you can get it when it's manageable, whatever that looks like, it's going to be a whole lot easier than if you just keep snowballing down that hill. What do you tell people?
With what I have learned with my ex-wife, I know there's nothing I can do or say that would change someone. What I can tell them and what I usually do tell them is just what I said earlier in the show. Look at the message in the mirror. Take a
Hmm.
good hard look at yourself in the mirror and start asking yourself some questions. Because I've had people call up and say, "Hey, I'd like to have a glass of wine or two after work. Am I an alcoholic?" I'm like, "That's not for me to choose. It's not for me to
Hmm.
decide. It's your choice, right? Do you look at yourself as an alcoholic?" So
Well, I feel
I
like
just
if you
tell
have to
people,
ask the question,
what's that?
but I feel like if you have to ask the question, you should go reevaluate some things.
Right, right. Yeah, because it's not my place to tell them.
Right.
And I've been going through, and I don't know when this podcast airs because I've been keeping something a secret for a long time. Since about the beginning of the year, I've been going through some training to be a certified crisis and recovery coach. This is where this whole path of doing the show and everything has taken me, and
Yeah.
that's one of the things we talk about in our training. It's a brain first approach, and we're the way I'm being trained is we are not there to tell people what they need to do with their life. We're there to ask a lot of questions to get them to think what's going on in their life, and that's exactly what I've been doing all these years. Is just I'll ask them questions about stuff just so I can get a little bit of feedback on where they're at, and I just tell them, just look at the message in the mirror, because if you're starting to see your
Hmm.
life change, that could be the reason why your life's changing.
Yeah. I've always
And so
thought that
you,
too. Like oh, sorry, Desiree. That
no,
it's
go ahead.
I've always felt like if it's a problem in your life, it's a problem. Like there's a whole spectrum of, am I an addict? Am I an alcoholic? Do I have, an addiction of whatever, gambling, sex, eating, money, whatever. And I've always just thought, you're right. Look at yourself in the mirror. If it's a problem in your life, if you're not honest with everyone around you, if you're not honest with yourself, it's a problem. And that's your gauge right there.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. I'm big on if you're not going to do it in front of people, you probably shouldn't be doing it. Um, if you're not going to go out there in front of your peers and your family and sit at the table and do it, you probably shouldn't be doing it. Um, but I think with cocaine too, I think growing up, I've seen the worst of addicts in cocaine, but I've also seen the people who could just do it on a Friday night and not think about it again until the next party or the next weekend. And cocaine is one of those things that has that reputation of being minimized. It's not the worst. It's no worse than a cup of coffee. It's no, there's so many things around cocaine because it was always a rich man's drug. You'd always see it with salesmen, always. You'd always see it in those higher end positions, corporate world. So it was more of a status quo. I think people looked at it than to be doing heroin or crack or something like that. Um, but you did talk about how you lost your job and that you finally had to kind of look in the mirror at things. Did you get any sort of like alcohol or not alcohol, but like drug rehabilitation or therapy, or are you just cold turkey? I'm changing. This is the path I'm setting for myself.
That's exactly what I did. Again, I just look at myself as being very fortunate and blessed, right? I'm like, I'm done. I'm done with this stuff. I just lost a career 24 years because of it. And I remember we had a party planned for that weekend after I lost my job. And I remember wanting to have a few drinks. The alcohol didn't even taste the same because I didn't have Coke in me. And I was out there barbecuing some brats and some steaks and things. And I remember out there just having the sweats. And I telling myself, am I withdrawing? Am I withdrawing?
Hmm.
Gosh, I think I'm withdrawing, right? I started shaking because I was used to having quite a bit of cocaine in me come Friday night. Because I would get off
Hmm.
early, go home, snort a bunch of lines, pound a couple beers, go out and do my yard work. So my yard work was completely done on Friday. And I was usually a little tipsy before my wife got home from work and drank all the way till we went to bed. So yeah, I just said, this is it. This is it. I'm done with it. And I even after those years, after I lost my job, I still dabbled in it here and there. And I didn't I didn't fall back into the trap. And I was scared to do it because I'm like, I can't fall back into this trap again. I just cannot do it. And I remember after I did it a few times, I'm like, I started feeling guilty, going, what the heck? the heck am I doing? Right. And I didn't go back into that trap again. Thank goodness. I was able to do it. It was done and over with, kind of like what you said, a few people, how they can do it every once in a while. And it just finally got to the point where I'm like, yeah, I think the time's done. I had my fun.
Mm-hmm.
You're definitely blessed to be able to walk away in
Yeah.
Very
in
blessed.
that manner.
What do you
Yeah.
think about, people who have an addictive personality and people who don't have an addictive personality? Do you feel like you lean towards not having an addictive personality and that helped it be like a mind over matter where you're like, I'm done. I just have to be done. I've had enough. And I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
That's a really good question, Tammy. With the training that I've been going through, and even when my wife was going through her alcoholism, I not right off the beginning. It took a few years down the road, probably about 5 years down the road. I started really thinking it had to do all with the brain, right? I would argue about someone saying it was all about a choice. I'm like, no, it isn't. No, it isn't. And
Mm-hmm.
now I've realized it is. It is more about the choice, and it's our brain. Our brains are taking over, and I think that's why the only difference where it was with me, and I'm not saying I'm better than any one of these other people, because I'm not, because I fell in that same trap that they happen to fall in. It's just I just got to that point to where I was able to control it. I was able to control that voice in my head going, so I'd do something different. I used to
Mm-hmm.
be a big time bowler. I was bowling 4 leagues a week. I played softball. I was playing 5 ball games a week, traveling around even on a traveling softball team. And I think doing those things also really helped with me.
Mm-hmm.
And not having, I don't believe I have the addiction personality.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got some friends who do, to where they were addicted to drugs, they were addicted to alcohol, they were addicted to sex, they were addicted to
Mm-hmm.
gambling, they were addicted to eating, they were addicted to, everything they did, they just got addicted to. However, they've been also able to beat it. And
Mm-hmm.
it's just by retraining their brains, I guess, getting rid of those negative neurons that looked at life going the same way. They're firing the same way all the time, and just basically rewiring. Because the more you start changing things, the stronger, and it's scientific proof that the neurons start binding more, right? Especially when you're putting feeling behind it, they just start binding closer and closer, and getting stronger. And a lot of that stuff kind of pushes away.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, if someone has an addiction personality, again, I do my best to kind of stay away from it because I don't know a lot about it.
Mm-hmm.
Just look at your life, because your life's going to tell you. Your life's going to tell you if it's going in the direction you want it to go or not. That's my version of it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
I think everybody has addictions. So I feel like everybody has an addictive personality. It's just what's your addiction of choice. Tammy, you probably wake up and have coffee every day. How are you going to function through your day without your coffee?
Mm-hmm.
And me, I smoked for 25 years. That was my vice. I'm still vaping, but we're working on it. But that's my vice. Everybody has a vice, and everybody has. So, like, now that you gave that vice up on the weekends and you've shifted, what is your new vice? Because you always replace it. You like when people are breaking from something, there's a replacement. So what has been that replacement for you?
Well, the unhealthy one, because I ended up quitting smoking too. I ended up quitting smoking. However, my unhealthy one is I have a problem with ice cream. A really bad problem with ice cream.
Sugar is actually one of the main ways people get over drug addictions. When my father
What
was
is?
Sugar.
sugar, like
Oh,
chocolate.
sugar. Yes, yes, it is. Yeah, because my ex-wife's addicted to sugar because of all the sugar that was in the alcohol. So
Mm-hmm.
that is my unhealthy one, and I justify it by putting peanut butter on it because it has protein. So I justify it. And it has to be crunchy peanut butter because there's also crunchy little peanuts in there. So again, more protein. So my healthy one, as I said at the beginning of the show, I took a lot of pride in how I looked. I've always stayed physical fit. I'm gosh, I feel like I just turned 60 and here I am quickly approaching 61. And I just said, the only thing that I know that can get my mind off of stuff is to start working out again. And my wife had bought me a dirt bike for Christmas the past December, and then I lost my job in July. And I decided to get on it one morning and ride it around the block. And it felt pretty good. And before I knew it, I was doing a mile. And then not so long down the road, next thing I know, I'm doing 3 miles. Then I'm doing 6 miles. And we ended up moving into an apartment because we lived in basements of friends' homes for the first couple of years because I lost all my retirement trying to save our house and the money, we were just broke. She was falling into her alcoholism, so she couldn't keep a job. And we moved in this apartment and they had a little workout place, and I started getting up early and going down and started working out. Then I found a gym to join that was like $10 a month, perfect for my budget. And I started going Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And I did that for about 2 years. And then I ended up doing Monday through Friday, and I have not stopped. I go 5 days a week to the gym. I'm an early riser after 24 years of waking up early in the morning. I'm up at 5, sometimes 4:30. I'm at the gym a little after 6. I work out till it's time for me to change and go to work. So that's what I've replaced it with. And I feel so blessed that I fell into the physical fitness, because that's the only thing, again, what I knew that I was fairly good at. And I knew that I could change my body and get my health back. And it took a long time. Our ego seems to take over. I remember bench pressing and only putting the 25 plates on the bench, and I was struggling. And I'm going, man, I used to pop 240 like nothing. I could pop out 3 with 240 on the bench really easy. And here I got 50 pounds plus a 45-pound bar, and I could hardly get it off my chest. I'm like, that opened my eyes so much. I'm like, this is how bad I've destroyed my body.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's where I'm at on that. And again, the ice cream.
And I love that you took that and you chunked it down into short-term realistic goals for yourself. It like the bike, like you went out, you didn't have this unrealistic expectation. If I can't ride 60 miles, forget it, I'm putting the bike away. Or if I can't bench my 240 or whatever, I'm putting that away. It was like, oh, okay, here I am. And I am going to get bound and determined to get back to where I was. And you had to chunk that down into something short term and something realistic so that you could maintain it and feel your progress. I think that's great.
Yeah, and
And
I've
exercise is
actually
the best medicine.
it is. It
So,
really is, because it keeps your mind going so much, right? There's so many things that you can do, and it's crazy. I get the majority of my ideas at the gym in the morning. I'll be doing an exercise, and all of a sudden the light bulb goes off, and I'm like, oh my gosh, and I'll hurry and text myself so I don't forget it, right? I'll text myself to go, okay, remember with this thought, because
that's so
the
true.
endorphins are hitting, they're firing so hard because I'm working my bodies. And the people that I've helped and have sat down with, I've even it's crazy because I didn't even realize that I was even really doing that with myself. But it's those baby steps, and I tell people that I've worked with, I'm like, even if you're shuffling your feet, it doesn't matter. As long as you're moving forward, doesn't matter how big that step is, even if it's only an inch, you're moving forward. That's progress. You just don't
Yeah,
want to go back.
right.
So
And it could
go
feel
ahead,
like
Tammy.
you're going backward. It could feel like you're going backwards in a sense, because when you're doing a whole bunch of lines of cocaine, you could probably bench press a lot more than that. You can you're getting things done. You've got this, if you're drinking, you've got that liquid courage. If you're, when you're altering your mind in one way or another, you think you can accomplish anything. And so then when you're just stone cold sober, it's like, ugh, I don't have the energy. I don't have the oomph. So that could play something on your ego, I'd imagine.
Oh yeah, because your ego can talk you out of a lot of stuff or talk you into a lot of things, and that's something else that I've really had to work on these past 15 years because of where my ego was in the past, right?
Yeah.
Because I was ego fed, right? It was all Al. Don't tell me no. Don't tell me this because you don't know what you're talking about. I know. I know. I know. I know. And it's
Oh.
been a long, hard lesson for me to go. Yeah, I didn't know, and I still got a long ways to go. I'm not going to know everything. I used to tell
Hmm.
my mechanics that when I do evaluations where they'd be there 5 years and like I know everything there is to know about a machine down there, and I'm like, really? I've been here 20 plus years and those machines still throw a curveball at me every once in a while. So you don't know everything there is to know, and that's how
Hmm.
life is as well. There's that constant learning, and I'm a big believer on my end of it that there is no finish line when it comes to working on yourself. There's
Yeah.
goals. You can set a goal
Hmm.
and reach a goal, set another goal and
Hmm.
reach a goal. When it comes time to working on yourself, it's a lifetime adventure in my eyes.
Yeah.
So
Well, and
I know that we're
go ahead.
getting short on time, but I wanted to kind of talk about the Resilience Collective Network and um, the Healing Utah Summit, if you wouldn't mind touching on those a little bit.
Yeah. You know, I don't know if you guys know where St. George, Utah is. It's about 350 miles south of Salt Lake City. And there was a young gal. She's basically the same age as my daughters. And she was in recovery and writing a book called Inspired to Recover by Mallory Roosh. It's a
Hmm.
really, really good book. I highly recommend reading it. It'll bring tears to your eyes when you hear her story. And somebody dropped my name to her, and she ended up getting a hold of me through Facebook. We ended up getting on a phone call, talked for 2 hours. She drove all the way up from St. George to be a guest on my podcast. And at the end of the show, I says, I'm adopting you as one of my daughters. I just fell in love with this lady right off the bat. And we just became really good friends. We got talking one day, and she goes, Al, I've had this dream about holding an event that's addiction based, where we can educate people, help get rid of the stigma, inspire others that are in their recovery journey or have been in long term recovery. And when she said that, I went, "You have got to be frickin' kidding me!" And she goes, "What? Is this a stupid idea?" I said, "Mallory, see, I'll get frickin' emotional with this one." I said, "Mallory, I've been thinking the same thing." She goes, "You got to be kidding me." I says, "No, I am not." I says, "I got this vision that we can hold an event and that one day we will pack thousands of people in one of these events and we're going to inspire them." And we talked about it off and on for months. And then probably the spring of 2022, she called me and she goes, "Are we ever going to do this event or are we just going to talk about it?" I said, "Let's do it. Let's pick a date." And she goes, "You're serious?" I said, "Yeah, let's just pick a date." "Well, how are we going to do it?" I'm like, "Hell, I don't know. Let's just let's go. Let's just do it. We'll jump in the pool. We'll learn how to swim while we're doing it." And we ended up holding our very first one in St. George, Utah, at a place called the Dixie Convention Center. We had about 75 people come to the
Oh,
event,
that's
which
great.
I called it a success. I spoke, my friend Mallory spoke, a gentleman by the name of Dave DeRocher, who's the executive director for the Other Side Academy downtown Salt Lake, spoke. Very, very powerful messages. And we had people coming up to us going, "This was amazing. This was one of the most inspirational recovery events where nothing was held back. You guys pulled all the punch. You just nailed it, right? We let it all out. We didn't sugarcoat anything. We just put it out there." And we decided to do another one in April of 2023. We brought in over 100 people at that one. Same thing. People started coming up to us. We had Mallory and I spoke, but we had another speaker, a different speaker come in. People were going, when are you going to hold another one? When are you going to hold another one? We're like, oh my gosh, this is really cool. So we ended up holding another one in October of last year. Same type. I mean, we had other speakers come in, and so it's got it going. We just planned our fourth one for October 5th. So our team is now meeting. We just nailed down our location and the date. So now we're going to start getting all the marketing ready. And our vision, we call it the Healing Utah Success Summit, but we bought the domain, the Healing Success Summit. Our vision is to go to different states. So we could do the Healing Wyoming Success Summit, the Healing Arizona. So our vision long term is to start taking this and touring and do other states, but take people, individuals who live in those states as the speakers. Also, because we want local people to be able to come out. And this year with October, we're going to do it almost kind of like a TED Talks. We're going to shorten up our talks, and we're going to bring in 5 speakers instead of having 3. And we're shortening all our talks up. And we're picking categories. So the healing event is around suicide, domestic violence, addiction, inspiration, stigma. And so we're all going to pick a topic, and that's what we're going to touch on.
Wow.
And as far as the ARC, the Addiction Resilience Collective, in 2022, I was getting invited to some recovery networking events. And at that time, my schedule was fairly open, so I could fit it in. And I was going to some of these networking things and meeting a lot of people who ran recovery centers or sober livings. And I got to build some really good friendships and relationships. And after a certain amount of time, I'm going, gosh, everyone knows everyone who works at a sober living or a recovery center. And it's either AA based, military type based, no holds bar. I mean, just military. Just rough and tough, and all these different types of recovery centers. But I'm like, there's so many other things out there. There are so many things out there now that help with recovery, whether it helps with withdrawals or triggers, traumas, mental health. Why? When I'd mention it to recovery centers, they're like, I don't know what you're talking about. Really? There's a product out there that does that? And I'm going, my gosh, no one knows. So I got with a buddy who's in long-term recovery, and I hit him up on it. He goes, Al, I'll help you get it started. And in February of 2023, we launched ARC. Our first event, we had 45 people attend. And he had to fizzle out because of work. I was working 2 jobs plus trying to do this and my podcast and speaking events. That was kind of like the least important. So about July of last year, I just kind of put it to a halt. And the rest of last year and in the beginning of this year, I look at myself as a very spiritual person, not religious, but spiritual. And I kept getting that voice in my head going, you need to get this going. You need to get this going. This is important. This is important. So women are really good at events, and they know how to bring people together. Now, I know how to do certain things from certain jobs and stuff that I've had, and I know how to network because I've been networking for 11, 12 years. So I reached out to some of my lovely lady friends who do business in like breath work, sound, feeding the brain, proper nutrition, and trauma. And I reached out to each one of them individually, and I said, hey, I used to do this event. I want to get it going again, but I need help. And after saying my prayers and doing different things and really meditating and thinking on it, your name popped up. Would you be interested in being a part of this? Not one of them ladies told me no.
Oh, wow.
And we actually
That's
meet
great.
this Wednesday, all of us, for the first time to start bringing this whole idea together, because I can't do it alone.
Mm-hmm.
Just like people in recovery, they can't do it alone, right? They need help. They got to have somebody there that they can rely on. And one of my buddies who's in physical fitness as well, who's been on my show a couple times, goes, Al, I've been kind of letting myself go, not getting involved in a recovery center. And somebody told me you're getting this network thing up. Can I be a part of it? So now he's coming on board. So our goal with this is hopefully next month we'll hold our very first one for this year. And we're going to bring in everyone, recovery centers, people who do NAD, like the Prime IV stuff where they do an injection. It's about a 4 to 6 hour ordeal, but people are getting rid of their triggers. And it's just vitamin B. It's all different types of vitamin B, and their triggers are disappearing. Some right after the first and some after the second. And my friend Jessica, who is very, very knowledgeable when it comes to nutrition, she has a podcast. We're talking about feeding the brain, because when we can start getting our brains healthy, that helps with the addiction again so much, because our brain's starting to think the proper way. And my friend TJ, she's amazing when it comes to coaching and meditation and stuff. And yeah, so we've got this group of ladies and me and another guy, and we're going to get this thing rocking and rolling, because we believe it's important that everyone knows what is out there, just not relying on recovery centers. And I haven't got any crap yet, because I've said this on my show, but 80% of the recovery centers out there are just BS. They're just revolving doors. They're there for the money. They're not there for the individuals. I only endorse a handful of recovery centers here in Utah who I believe are 100% legit for the individuals that walk in their door and want to see them succeed. So, yeah, we just want to make a change, and all these ladies want to make a change. We want to see a difference.
That's exciting. Well, you can tell you're definitely passionate about it. You guys have a plan. You're coming together. You believe in it, which, you're bringing people together. You're bringing people in, and you're giving people an option. So you're doing great things.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, you guys
Yeah.
are too, by having people on your show, and to use their voice.
Yeah.
Well,
Thank you.
we are going to link everything in the description. You have provided us all the websites and ways that people can connect with you and follow you. And of course, go visit your podcast. You invited Tammy and I both on it. We'll have to definitely connect and get that planned out.
Please, I'd love to have you guys
But
come
thank
on.
you so much.
Great.
Yes,
That
thank
would be
you.
our
Thank you for your
pleasure.
time.
Yeah. Well, Al, it was so great to meet you. We appreciate your time, and let's get your word out. Sounds great.
Okay, well, and if I can help you guys get your word out too, we're all here to help one another.
Awesome.
Yeah.